Yeah, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. Good morning, everyone. I will have a few slides about the Faroe Islands and what we do in order to achieve our very ambitious goal of reaching 100% green electricity by 2030 already, where tidal gonna play or can play a very important role. First, a few words about where we're located or situated. We are in the North Atlantic Sea, a group of 18 small islands, only 52,000 inhabitants. And what is important in terms of this context is that we are electrically isolated from neighboring countries. No subsea cables to others. Our ambition is to reach 100% green electricity by 2030, and we encourage people to change their means of heating as well to heat pumps and their means of transport to electric vehicles. So actually all energy onshore will be electrified by 2030. That's at least what we take into account when we project the energy demand up until 2030. So we will go from roughly 350 gigawatt hours in 2017 up to roughly 600 gigawatt hours in 2030, and all of them should be green. And as you can see, as of today, we are 50% green in terms of wind and hydro, but still a way to go. However, we have very good tidal resources, but we have very good resources in general. We have average wind speeds exceeding 10 meters per second. We have some sun, not very much, but in the summertime, where it's light more or less 24/7, we have roughly 1,000 hours a year. And then this interesting resource in tidal streams in between the islands and the different straits, 3.5 meters per second in peak velocities. And then we have rain, quite a lot of rain, 1,300 millimeters a year, and even in various places exceeding 3,000 millimeters a year. So hydro is a very important resource as well. If you look at the complementary of the resources, we know that wind and hydro or wind and rain are quite often linked together, and we have quite a lot of these resources in the winter months, but not so much in the summer. But on the opposite, we have sun there, very complementary to the other resources. And then we have tidal streams or tidal resources. We know exactly, as the previous speaker said, on minute when we have tidal streams between the islands. And tidal is obviously not linked to the weather conditions as the other three resources are. This is the strait where we're gonna put our first kites in next year. And what is interesting, first of all, it's a predictable resource, not linked to other or the weather conditions. And we have this very interesting phase shift or time-wise phase shift between the different straits. And here we see the tidal speeds in 3 different straits. And you can imagine that if we deploy tidal turbines in these 3 straits, they will provide some baseload generation, very important to us. Another thing is in the graph on the left-hand side is if we install traditional technologies like wind and solar and hydro. Wind will have 82% of the energy production onshore by 2030. Solar will have 5% and hydro 13%. But if we introduce tidal, it will replace more than half of the wind production and more or less all solar production. It will account for 48% in our projections. And obviously wind and solar panels are quite, you can see them with your eyes. That's not the case with the technology that Martin will present in a few minutes. It's submerged kites. So tidal technology and tidal energy is definitely of interest to us. I think I will leave the floor here to Martin.
Thank you, Terji. It's good to be here in Paris. A few words on the technology. We saw sort of first generation solutions here, nice presentations from the previous tidal companies. We are a second generation system based on kites. This technology is also used in in new wind energy solutions, and for the same reason, we reduce weight dramatically. And most importantly, for making tidal a global component of the energy mix, is that this solution makes it possible for us to go way below the peak flows needed for horizontal axis turbines. So when we talk about our rated power, we are at 1.6 meters per second peak flow. And that will expand the tidal and ocean current market by a factor of at least 10. So we take this from a niche technology into a relevant technology from a global energy mix perspective. You're aware of the cubic relationship between the energy generated and the flow through the turbine, and this is where it comes in. So the turbine is in the nose of this kite, so we push it, and we can then collect energy from a larger area of the ocean. See if I can move this on. Yes, and I think there's no longer an issue of whether tidal or the kinetic energy in the oceans will be used to mankind's need. I think we're beyond that now. Just as an illustration, I mean, we're still a pre-revenue company, even if we have a PPA in place with one customer. But the market cap of Minesto listed on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange in Stockholm, First North, is around 200 million euros. We have secured more than 80 million euros in funding, and roughly half of that is actually EU and Swedish government funding. So this technology is the most heavily backed technology from the public in Europe today. So and the reason is the global market potential and the cost projections that we're making. We don't use more than a tenth of the material of the previous solutions you've seen. It gives us huge advantages when it comes to service maintenance, installation costs, and of course the actual cost of the systems using less material. So we are targeting sites in the Faroe Islands as our prime site with our customer SEV. We are based in Holyhead in the UK, Wales, and we have the R&D in Gothenburg, Sweden. So we are around 60 people today, covering all relevant engineering areas, including operations development. And that will make us sort of one of the largest marine energy technology companies in the world as it is now. We are based in Asia with collaboration with the Taiwanese government. They have a huge potential of ocean currents, up to half of their electricity needs. We're working with a community in Florida on the Florida current. We just recently announced a collaboration with EDF on the French Channel coast as well. So we are really happy with the evolution and development we're seeing right now with the company. And most importantly is the project in the Faroe Islands. It's a privilege to work with a small society like the Faroe Islands. Quick decisions, simple consenting processes, and a very dedicated sort of target and goal to go 100% renewable. And it's really interesting to see what the total cost of a 100% renewable energy system looks with tidal compared to without tidal. This is where we come in. It's also an advantage that all the fjords in between the islands here are sheltered areas, which will also improve cost structure of first installations. We're also looking into the next phase of this. It's not just about putting a few machines to the grid. We're looking into the larger sites. And this is also very much a matter then of finding sites with a time shift, so we can save ourselves energy storage capacity by generating continuously to the grid. We have the privilege of working down to, as I said, 1.6 meter per second in mean peak flows, which gives us an abundance of sites in this area to choose from. I'd say that the identified sites are around 100 megawatts that we see today, but the potential is far beyond that, just for the Faroe Islands. And I think it would be interesting to see if you have any thoughts or questions on where we are with this, so you'll be most welcome to ask them. And I hope Terji will help me as well if the interest is in that direction.
I'm supposed to throw it to you. You ready?
Hello. It's
Hello.
a very interesting technology, but also concerning the turbines, I have one question. What about environmental impact on the life? I mean, I don't know, whales or other animals that are in the sea.
This is, of course, a major concern from all responsible governments in the world. So I think this industry has for more than a decade proven that all relevant species in the ocean, they avoid those systems because they can. So we've been testing continuously for 6 years in Strangford Lough, and we've not had a single incident. Seals, harbor porpoise, diving birds, they avoid the area when the system is in operation. They swim through it when it's not in operation.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Very interesting. My question is, what is your sweet spot in terms of demand? You're thinking on the big wind farms offshore replacing, or your small communities? What is your sweet spot?
This is a utility scale technology. The units that we look into for the 30 megawatt array will be a little bit above 1 megawatt each. But if we look at the CFD results of analysis we see that, for instance, for the ocean currents in Florida and Green Island off the coast of Taiwan, we talk about units up to 3 megawatts. And the advantage here is that, I mean, we have a lot of space since we can deploy them at larger water depths. And then we talk about wingspans up to maybe 24 meters in between the wingtips. I lost you there now. You need the cube.
So 30 and above. So below, let's say, small communities, like access to energy projects in small islands, you foreseen that? I mean, the size is the size. My question is about from 10 to 500. What is your dream project?
Well, I think we have our dream project right now with SEV. I mean, we start with small-scale units, grid-connected this winter, and then we move into stepwise building out arrays up to 30 to 70 megawatts. But this technology works fine as a microgrid system as well. So the units we're deploying first will be 100 kilowatt units, which will be really good for island communities, yeah. So it's both.
I don't want to throw it.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you the obvious question that you probably always get, which is LCOE. Where is that? Where are you on LCOE, and where do you see that happening? I mean, where do you see that going, as well as total? Could you give us an idea of total potential, global potential?
The global potential for the technology as it is now, up to the 1 megawatt units, is around an installed capacity of 600 gigawatts globally, which is 1.5 times the total global nuclear capacity. And now we've excluded everything that is sort of at a non-economical distance to shore. And if we add that, we're going to get into an even larger scenario with, huge, large offshore infrastructure doing hydrogen plants or whatever. But that's sort of far beyond that. And if we look at LCOE, this is the area where this technology gets really interesting. Of course, we have to apply a modest learning curve to study this. But with that, we'll say that with a gigawatt installed, we will be in the 30 euro per megawatt hour range. And that is for small arrays. So we've not exceeded 30 megawatt arrays. And it's also not factoring in the scale up I talked about. So it's still below 1 megawatt units where we reach those numbers. And it's simply in the technology. It's so lightweight. So we talk about 20 tons per megawatt per system. We float the systems out. We can command them to surface, so we don't have to do any lifting at sea. And we also generate in rather, let's say, friendly ocean conditions, since we can work on less aggressive tidal sites, which we prefer. And if you're interested, I can share you a lot of detail on how we work with the LCOE calculations. We've been into that for the last 8 years with actually a lot of the experience from the offshore wind sector and consultancy firms to get that right.
Time for one more. We have time for one more question. If anyone has a question, or we can move on. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you, Terji.